guys, how's it going? This is a huge group, the biggest YWLS that they have ever had. Last time I was here was 2019 when I was hosting it, and I was about to give birth on stage. I just gave birth to our second 6 weeks ago, and someone backstage was like, I feel like you're always pregnant. And I was like, yes, for the past 3 years, I have been pretty much continually pregnant. And so this is the first time in a long time that I'm not wearing sweatpants, which I feel like that's true for a lot of people, not just people who were pregnant, but for the past year, we've been rocking the elastic pretty hard. So I'm impressed by all of you who have decided to wear pants and a skirt and actually get dressed up. It takes a lot of effort, and you guys look great. I'm really, really happy to be here. This is my favorite conference. I do a lot of these conferences. I speak a lot of different places. I love SAS, but YWLS is by far the best conference that any political organization puts on. And so I'm just very glad to be here, and I'm glad that all of you are here. Isabel's talk was amazing. I think that my talk is going to be a good piggyback on top of that. And I've heard that you guys have talked a lot about kind of what we're going to talk about, but I hope to give you some unique takeaways and a unique perspective. I want to back up a little bit, because there are so many different policies that I want to talk about, so many different news stories that have occurred over the past few weeks while I've been on maternity leave that I'm just bursting with things to talk about. But I want to kind of go back to the basics and go back to the foundations and just ask a really simple question. What is a woman? And because I have been continuously pregnant for the past 3 years, that's something that I've thought a lot about, and it's something that I've become very proud of in a way that I probably hadn't before, in a way that I probably hadn't thought about before, the uniqueness of a woman. Now, that probably seems, or it would have seemed even just a few years ago, like a ridiculous question. What is a woman? I think everyone knows what a woman is, but now that's a question that's very contentious. Isabel mentioned that. I'm sure other speakers have too. What is a woman? What is a definition of a woman? Now, there is literally half the country that cannot answer that question, that very basic question. Is it just a declaration? Is it a feeling? Is it pronouns in your bio? Is it just something that you identify as on any given day? Is it wearing a dress and heels? It's simultaneously a lot simpler than that, but it's also more complex than that. It's simpler than that in the sense that our biology tells us what we are. This idea of our sex and our gender identity being separate, being independent, is actually not a scientific idea at all. It's a very mystical, mythical idea. And so it's very simple in that we know that we're women based on our biology, based on our DNA that was decided at the moment of conception. But it's also a little bit more complex than that. And before I explain that, let me just say something really basic that I know it might even be controversial in this room. I don't know. But if we as conservatives are not willing to conserve the most fundamental, basic fact of life, the scientific difference between a male and a female, then the conservative movement has no business calling itself a conservative movement. If you are not conservative enough to conserve that, if you are not courageous enough to defend that, like I said, the most fundamental, basic fact of life, the most obvious fact of life, then you're not going to be courageous enough to defend the more controversial issues. So if conservatives can't conserve what it means to be a woman, then we have no business calling ourselves conservatives. Now, being a woman is also more complex than just our biology, just our chromosomes. We're more than what progressive postmodernists call us, whether it's cervix havers, whether it's menstruators, whether it's chest. I know you probably didn't think that you would hear cervix at this conference, but here we are. Chest feeders, menstruators, gestators, all of these very dehumanizing names that we are often called. We are individuals with a variety of personalities, but women have a lot in common. We are amazing nurturers. We are good cultivators. We're multitaskers. We're amazing communicators. We're good crisis managers. We will never be the same as men. We will never be as fast as men. We will never be as strong as men. You don't see a whole lot of women trying to compete against men in track. There's a reason for that it's only the other way around. We bring different things to the table. So what it means to be sisters, to be daughters, to be mothers is different than what it means to be brothers, sons, husbands, fathers. We're not made to be the same. And that's something to be celebrated, to be embraced. Femininity, womanhood is something to be celebrated, to be embraced. And yet, in most of the world, I think sometimes we don't realize this, that in most of the world it's not celebrated, it's not embraced. If you look at various countries in Asia, in the Middle East, in Africa, it's actually very dangerous to be a woman. Like we talk about oppression in the United States, I don't think that we realize that true oppression, even enslavement of women and children is happening around the world. The idea of a young women's leadership conference is paradoxical, is completely bizarre to the majority of the world. Like I don't think we realize how fortunate we are, how blessed we are to live in the United States of America, where it's not only that we're free to do that, but that it's celebrated, a young women's leadership conference. But we do have our own problems here, whether it's the radical gender ideology that is working toward the erasure of women, whether it's the brutal killing of girls inside the womb. Women are lied to. We're manipulated here, maybe in ways that we're not in other countries. And often we're lied to and manipulated by other women. Women who state that it's their mission to actually empower and uplift other women. Feminism has told us that in order to finally be empowered to overcome the patriarchal abuse that apparently has been malignant in the United States for all of our history, that we have to liberate ourselves. And liberation, we're told in the West, means aborting your child to take a life-sucking job that you don't even like. You may have been told that liberation means guilt-free promiscuity. You might have been told that female liberation and big government are somehow inextricably intertwined. Or you might have been told that we have to accept men being women to truly be liberated. Or you've probably heard this very pervasive lie that I don't actually think is necessarily just a liberal lie, but it's the reason why I wrote my book, You're Not Enough. And it's the lie that in order to be happy, in order to be fulfilled, that all you have to do in life is to love yourself, that the most important thing for you is to just feel good about yourself and to serve yourself and to do whatever makes you feel good and to cut out anyone that doesn't serve you in your life. That's a lie. It's all nonsense. I promise you, you are not enough for you. You will not be fulfilled and satisfied and successful in life just by loving yourself. That's a vapid and superficial goal if that's the only or the paramount goal that you have. So we are lied to so often as women. I mean, it goes back to the Garden of Eden. Who did Satan first lie to? And what was the lie? How did it start? Did God really say? The same thing is happening to women today. We are susceptible to it. And we are susceptible to not just manipulation, but also to manipulating others. And what's fascinating is that some of the same people that are feeding us these lies that they say that they're doing in the name of empowerment are the very same people that are creating this toxic culture of what we talk about so often, which is cancel culture. And I've talked about this before, but something that I've noticed over the past few months is that the majority of these cancellations that we see, especially on Instagram, are championed by women. Like, women are often leading the charge against other women because someone isn't sufficiently anti-racist or someone isn't sufficiently culturally sensitive in a product they sell or a post that they publish or something like that. It is so often women that are canceling other women, and they say that it's because they're just trying to hold each other accountable. The reality is it's like we haven't graduated from high school. So we have no business talking about being oppressed by other men when we are oppressing each other. And I want to introduce, or probably not introduce, because I know that you guys are smart and you've thought about this and talked about this and heard about this before, but true liberation and empowerment is going to mean rejecting all of the lies that I just talked about. If you truly want to be free, if you truly want to be empowered, then you're going to have to be countercultural. You're going to have to swim upstream. What I talk about on my podcast, Relatable, being human salmon. You're going to have to go upstream because it's so easy to go downstream with the culture. And by doing that, you're going to have to, number one, appreciate the fact, embrace the fact that you are distinct from men. Like I said, you will never be as fast or as strong as a man. You will never bring everything to the table that a man does, and vice versa. So embrace your uniqueness as a woman and thank God for it. God did not make you accidentally. It is not happenstance that you were created a woman. You were not made arbitrarily. You were not made without purpose. It is not a coincidence. It is not serendipitous that you just happened to have the DNA that you do. God created you to be a woman, to have the special, unique purpose that you have, to have the ability, to have the talent, to have the strengths and weaknesses that you have that men don't, for a reason. Embrace that. Number two, reject what we just talked about, this idea of what I talk about in my book, trendy narcissism. Realize that you are not enough to fulfill you. Every Instagram influencer and their mom is telling you that you're enough, that you're perfect the way that you are, that you don't have any flaws, you don't have any failures, that you embrace all of the mistakes that you've ever made as just funny quirks that you don't need to feel bad about. Why don't you message those influencers and tell them that you voted for Donald Trump and see if they have the same message for you? Probably not. And my point is that these people don't know you. They don't know you. And I guarantee if they knew what you stood for, they wouldn't be telling you you're perfect as you are and never to change. And so don't take what they're saying as reality. Don't take it as truth. Don't get your confidence from what people are telling you on Instagram. They don't know you. They don't care about you. These pithy messages that are targeted to women to sell more workout programs don't mean anything. We're not perfect. We mess up all the time. And instead of wasting more time focusing on ourselves, which I promise that we do not have an epidemic of selflessness in this country. We don't need to waste more time just focusing on ourselves. We can spend more time focusing on finding joy and fulfillment from the only two things ultimately that are really going to satisfy us, and that is loving the Lord our God with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength, and loving our neighbor as ourselves. That's it. That's it. And that doesn't mean that you hate yourself. That doesn't mean that I'm saying embrace self-loathing or self-deprecation, but I am saying, and that taking our eyes off of ourselves so constantly is actually going to give us so much of the joy and the fulfillment that we're trying and failing to find inside of ourselves. Number three, give the same grace to other people that you want to be given yourself. I read a quote by C.S. Lewis, and it's always stuck with me, that we are so much quicker to give the benefit of the doubt to ourselves than we are to other people. When it comes to making mistakes ourselves or having character flaws, we excuse it away. We say, well, I have this in my past, or this person did something to me, or I didn't sleep well last night, or someone said something to me on social media I didn't like, so we excuse our bad behavior. We're never willing to do that to other people. So if you want to be countercultural, if you want to be liberated and empowered as a woman, feel free to give grace to other people that you want to be given yourself. That might not be popular, that might not get you a lot of followers, you might not go viral by that. Maybe you'll be like Chris Harrison and get fired from your job for saying that we should give grace to people, but it's worth it. I promise you it will free you from this truly toxic environment that I think women author so often, which is tearing each other down and saying that we care about one another. I can tell you that the most freeing time of my life, especially in this industry, I started, it was 2015, 6 years ago or something like that, maybe 5.5 years ago, when I realized that you probably have heard this quote before. Comparison is the thief of joy. When I realized that there is no one in the world, no matter their success, no matter what they do, that can possibly thwart God's plan for me. And that's true for you too. No one else's success can change what you do. It's not going to thwart, it's not going to mess up, it's not going to put an obstacle in front of whatever God has purposed you to do. I promise you, as long as you are focused on what other people think of you, what other people are doing, and whether or not you're doing better than someone else, you will stay miserable. So if you want to be liberated, if you want to be free from that toxic environment of tearing each other down, then realize that you don't have anyone to compare yourself to. And doing that is actually, it's actually showing that you don't trust the Lord and the path that he has created for you. So that's number 3, or number 4. No, that's number 3. I can count. Number 4, last one. If at all possible, which I know that you guys have heard about this over the past couple of days, I've been told, if at all possible, and I know it's not possible for everyone, if at all possible, get married and have children. As many children as you possibly can, as many children as the Lord will give you, make this a priority in your life. Don't just let it happen to you. Make it a priority. Now, I'm not talking about making it an idol. I mean, marriage isn't everything. Of course, having kids is not everything. There are a million different ways to glorify God, and his plan will be his plan for you. But if you have anything to do with it, if it's possible, get married and have kids. Make it a priority. We've got a declining birth rate in this country. You guys have probably heard about that. I think it's supposed to be like 2.3 and our rate is like 1.8, which is really bad. So you can literally change the world by doing it with your husband. And so I can't recommend that. I cannot recommend that enough. And so I promise you, whether even if you become the President of the United States one day, there will be nothing more rewarding that you do than becoming a mom. Now, I'll be honest, and this is something that a lot of people probably won't tell you. When it comes to motherhood, you cannot have it all. It's not possible. You cannot have it all, really in life in general, but I have experience as a mom, as a working mom, you can't have it all. You can't be a full-time mom and work a full-time job. Like something's gonna give. Push will come to shove. Now, if you can do both, do both. Thankfully, thank God, my family and I have managed a way for me to be able to balance both. And that's a question that you're gonna get a lot when you're a mom and you're trying to work. That's a question that men aren't asked, and that's okay, which is how do you balance it all? And the truth is, it's really hard. A couple years ago, when I had our first baby, I took a big step back. And I don't know, most people probably don't notice that because I still have 4 podcast episodes that come out every week, but I stopped traveling as much. I stopped doing as many TV appearances, radio hits. I stopped doing as much as I used to do because I just didn't have time, and it was so important for me to prioritize being a mom and trying as best as I can to still balance this work that I feel called to. But I'm telling you right now, it's hard. And I am and was like a lot of you guys. I mean, you guys are probably very ambitious, very career oriented, and you might be sitting there thinking, I'm never going to stop working. I'm never going to feel the pull to be a stay-at-home mom. I cannot tell you how many friends have said the same thing. And then you get there, they lay that baby on your chest, and you've never felt the love that you feel in that moment, and you realize everything changes. Now, that doesn't mean that your work isn't important. I choose to still work, but this is my advice. My advice is for you, if you ever have to make the choice, if you can do both, do both. If you ever have to make the choice between your job and between motherhood, I am telling you, hands down, choose motherhood. I promise you that you will not regret it. And you'll know, as soon as you have that baby, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. You'll be like, oh, I remember Allie Stuckey saying that years ago, that when they lay that baby on your chest, you feel this tidal wave of love that you've never felt in your life. You would die 1,000 deaths for that child. All of a sudden, all the hopes and dreams and fears that you have for yourself are immediately, automatically transferred onto that person. And you know that you would do anything to make that little person happy, to make that little person fulfilled. And I'm telling you, that is worth every sacrifice every sacrifice that you make. And it does take sacrifice. You sacrifice your body in some ways. You sacrifice a lot of time. You might sacrifice money. You sacrifice your sanity some days. And it is absolutely worth it. That's one of the problems with the trendy narcissistic culture that we live in that preys upon women, telling you that sacrifice and inconvenience are things to be avoided. If you avoid sacrifice, selflessness, and inconvenience for your whole life, I promise you that you will end up old and sad and alone. So don't do it. Don't avoid those things. Embrace those things, especially when it comes to motherhood. It is the most amazing and gut-wrenching love and responsibility that you will ever have. And look, I know that not everyone in this room will become a mom, and you don't get second place if you don't become a mom. There are a million different ways to glorify God. A million different ways to glorify God. That doesn't make you less of a woman. It doesn't make you any less valuable, any less of an asset to this country or for our future. But if you have the option, if you have the ability to become a mom, do it. I love what this theologian, John Wesley, said. I learned more about Christianity from my mother than from all the theologians in England. A lot of you are wondering, and he lived in England if you didn't catch that. A lot of you are wondering how you're going to make an impact on the future. A lot of you are wondering how you're going to make a difference. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to start a podcast? Are you going to write a book? Are you going to lead a campaign? Are you going to be a politician? And maybe you'll do all of those things, and that's wonderful. Those are all ways to make a difference. But I promise you, you will never make a bigger difference on the future than raising little humans. That I promise you. So don't make your goal fame. You might become famous. Don't make your goal fame. Don't make your goal money. Don't make your goal beauty. All of those things are going to fade. Try to invest in the things that are going to last, living a substantive, selfless, meaningful life, making the small sphere the spot of eternity on which God has placed you better. That is your goal in life. And I promise you, if that's what you pursue, you will find the joy and the fulfillment that you may be trying and failing to find in the right things. In the wrong things is what I meant to say. But thanks for not calling me out on that. Thank you guys so much for listening to this speech. I do have one more thing to say. So I don't know how else to say this, so it's a little bit awkward just to end my speech like this, but I have 7 of my books. I heard that they sold out here at a panel. So I have 7 of my books. You're not enough, and that's okay. And they're signed. And so I guess just the first 7 people to come see me out there can get a free book. I'll just give it to you for free. But that's all I have to say. Thank you guys so much for having me, and thank you for being here.